What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Daddy Cruise Show. Tristan, Boat Daddy here.
Lonnie from Delta Crew. How you guys
Nice,
doing?
nice. Yeah, here we
Yeah,
go.
yeah,
We're working out the details here. Definitely excited about the show. As
yeah.
you could see in the last episode, we got carried away. Just talked for I think it was an hour and a half.
hmm
Um, Going forward, we're going to try to condense some things. Obviously, unless there's some crazy stuff going on in the industry, or say it's a holiday weekend, then you might see like a kind of a longer show. I think just
hmm
it'll because there's more to pack in and unpack. And
Yeah,
today, I really just want to go over a couple things. Get more in detail on the waves we've ridden. In the first episode, we kind of jumped all over the place, but we'll have more of a structure. So we'll just talk about waves and maybe a couple of crazy lake stories or some
yeah,
wild stuff that you experienced. Do you want to start with what waves you've
yeah, yeah,
ridden
yeah.
and kind of what feedback you
So
have from?
not really much. Really the Supreme, a Nautique, a Malibu, and a Mastercraft. Not much. The Mastercrafts, I feel like they have that weird lip. So some of them a weird lip on the
Which model? What did you ride? I'm curious.
X24. Kind of
Nice,
a weird
nice.
lip. Nice wave. I like their ballast system. Really nice boat. They have that slosh system, so it's almost like an auto lean. It's really nice. Auto lean's nice. The Nautique wave is a wall. It's huge.
Was that
Really,
a Paragon or a G?
it was a 230, I believe.
Okay,
Yeah, 230. I mean, I feel like all Nautiques have that huge wall wave. It's almost like just a wall of water. And I mean, some people like it, some people hate it. Me, I don't really matter as long as it's a nice clean face. The
right.
Supreme, just big. I mean, there's no really other way to describe it. I mean, just a big wall of water, a lot of push, a little too much push
Really?
sometimes. Almost wants to throw you into the back of the boat. But if with a really powerful good wave, any boat can do that. But
Right, right.
yeah, and then Malibu. Malibu's nice, buoyant, enough stiffness, not too much push, nice clean face. Can't really
What
complain about a Malibu.
what Malibu did you ride?
M235.
Okay, I feel like that's a good size. Like, it's a great
Yeah,
size.
huge, really deep boat. I actually thought about buying one. There's one in Texas. It's a bright lime green. The really,
I
really
think you did you
nice.
send me that one? I think you
I
sent me that one.
did. I
That
think I
one looked
did.
good.
Yeah,
That's
bright lime green. It's nice boat, nice wave. So yeah, that's all I've got.
nice, nice. Yeah, I've jumped around a little bit. Obviously, I've ridden behind multiple axes. I've ridden behind multiple A22s, a T250. And kind of same thing with yours. It takes a little bit. Every boat is, it's going to take you a minute to kind of figure out your setup and your sweet spot. I know you said yours, you struggled a little bit for the first six
Mhm.
months ish,
Yeah.
trying to get a consistent wave. Mine, I feel like I've gotten it to a really good point. I can get it pretty consistent now. The T250 was really long, really big, and that's a huge boat. You do if you're in a tighter cove though, you'll run out of real estate really quick. You know what I mean? And trying to turn that thing's like a lake limo, so you're trying to turn that
Mhm.
thing around, and it's huge.
Yeah.
Uh, that was a 22, I want to say, a T250. I've ridden, and then mine's a 15. I've ridden behind a 17 A22. I've also ridden behind a 18 G23.
Mhm.
And I have like two different experiences with the G23, which is a crazy. The first time I rode it was like super. I don't know if it's just the water or what happened
Mhm.
that day. It was very like linear. I've talked to you offline about this. It's
Yeah,
very
yeah.
linear, so you kind of have to ride up on the wall and use the wall to come down and carry your speed, which
Mhm.
was weird. But then like the next summer, it started making like your traditional kind of bowl style wave, like that cup that pushes you. So I don't know what changed or what happened or if the I don't know. It was like super weird. I didn't love the G at first, and then it
Mhm.
grew on me the second summer we rode. I've ridden behind a Centurion, two Centurions, a Centurion, like a 15 FX 44. I
Mhm.
could be getting the model wrong, but it was about that time frame. I know it was a 15. That wave I loved out the gate. They had it pretty dialed. The guy, his son used to be a professional surfer, or like he was like coming up through the ranks and like basically about to go pro or was pro. And so they had that boat super dialed. I love that boat. And actually, it's the same. I rode that boat. It's in one of my clips on the Boat Daddy page, and we did
Mhm.
the party wave, the big bowl.
Yeah, yeah.
So it was that boat that I rode behind, and that boat was sick. And that thing's got a banging system. I do like Centurions. They don't do them as much anymore, but the downfire speakers where they have the
Yeah, yeah,
come
yeah.
out and then the ones facing down, kicking down into the floor, which I think that design is super sick.
Mhm.
And then I did ride behind an RI2. I think it's an RI 265. I could be
Mhm.
wrong. Yeah, I'm like 90% sure it's an RI. I wasn't stoked on it. I do think there needed to be some setup adjustments. he had 1,000 pounds of lead in it as well. And then I did talk to a lady this weekend that owns an RI 230, and she
Mhm.
said like those boats are super finicky. If you throw too much weight in it, it kind of gets a little funky. So I think it just needs a little bit of fine tuning. But I wasn't
Mhm.
stoked out the gate. I knew it was a big boat, and we talked about it in the last episode. Sometimes too big is not the better option.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, I want to say I think that's it. I feel like I'm missing one. I do want to ride a Supra. Oh yeah, I've ridden multiple MBs. I talked about that in the last show. Like
Yeah.
a 14 MB, a 17, and then the 20. I believe Joe's is a 22 MB or 21, but it was an Alpha, 23 Alpha. So,
Mhm.
and that thing was huge. It had so much push. It was a monster, and both sides were the same. Like my boat, the goofy side is huge and long and perfect. And then my regular side is it's good, it's fine. But like his, both sides were unbelievable.
Mhm.
And it had so much push, and I could ride that thing so deep, and being like a bigger guy, that may give me so much more confidence to just ride. Because a lot of times I ride right off the back of the boat and I play right off the back of the boat. I don't like going super back because I'm gonna shoot out the back of the wave. And then I did ride behind actually another MB Alpha, but that MB Alpha wasn't I didn't like it as much. So super weird. And he had a setup like a little bit different than my other buddy Joe's. So ridden behind a lot of MBs, shockingly. But I definitely they stepped up when with the Alpha body style. That one definitely stepped up a lot in my mind because I kind of wrote MB off. I get it. The price tag is, I mean, the price tag we talked about too. The price tag on all these
Yeah,
boats
yeah.
is expensive. So once you're spending 150 plus on a boat, it just kind of depends on what features you want, I guess.
Yeah, and I'm curious on when you said talking about the Centurion, that's really, really, really like different. I mean, I've heard everybody, oh, I love the RI 265, such a big boat, the wave's huge, and I'm really curious maybe if they had too much weight in that boat, or maybe not enough. Maybe they
That's
didn't lean it enough.
I don't know. And I tried to tweak on it a little bit and make some minor adjustments, like draining a little bit out of the non-surf side. And
Mhm.
but even our buddy that has the MB, he was with us that day too, and he wrote it, and he's like, "Yeah, there's like no trough. Like it was super weird. Like there's no trough to give you the push." And he's like, "Yeah, there's not a ton of push." And so it wasn't just me. It was like I'm not biased.
Mhm.
Somebody else was saying the same thing, and he rides goofy. His wife rides regular. So yeah, it was just a weird situation. And then there's another guy with a Centurion out there. He's like, oh yeah, this is what you want your settings at. And I was like, dude, those settings are not cutting it on this boat. Like we need to figure something else out. And I don't know if it was not enough weight or too much weight, and it was like washing it out. And like we tried to go a little faster, tried going slower.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, because I mean, you see all the commercials, you see all the ads, you see all the
Yeah.
pros. Centurion is like the industry standard.
Mhm.
So I was really shocked when I got behind it. And like at the same time, I think I want to say it had to be something to do with setup. We did have a lot of people on the boat, but I think it was setup, if anything.
Because I know in the Supreme, I know the Centurion and the Supreme, I mean, it's pretty much the same boat.
Right.
Kind of just like Chevy and GMC, really, really similar.
Yeah.
Those boats, the back corner, I don't think gets deep enough in the water.
Mhm.
So it kind of just creates almost like this washy kind of face. And, you really have to get that corner, I think,
Like
really
buried.
deep, like
Yeah.
buried, which is really weird. I mean, you're buying a brand new boat, you wouldn't think, hey, I have to lean it this much, but it's weird how
That
that pull works.
that's what bothers me a lot about these boat industries because a lot about the boat manufacturers is like build the boat like if you're gonna and I get it, there's upgrades and there's the aftermarket industry, right?
Mhm.
But if I'm spending over 100K on a boat,
Mhm.
that shit should be ready to go out the box. Like that's
Yeah.
probably my biggest pet peeve is like when you hear these guys like, yeah, I bought my Malibu or I bought my Axis or whatever, and I had to I threw 500 pounds of lead in the bow and to get to do this or whatever brand it is. I've heard it across Tygas. I've heard it across everything. It's
Mhm.
like I don't want to roll around with lead. That's why I'd carry a tsunami pump in a
Mhm.
bag, and I only use that though when I have a light crew. If I have like six or more people on the boat, I'm not normally using that bag. But if it's only three or four people on the boat, then I pull out that bag because I want to squat it. But I think any boat too, if you have a heavier, get your heaviest person. Sorry, it's like the
Yeah.
benefits a bit like whether you're muscle or you're chubby, whatever it is, you're sitting in the corner, whichever side
Mhm.
we're surfing on. And I've watched my friends that are like heftier people sit there, and I've watched the wave literally like grow like before my eyes.
Yeah, no, yeah. I mean, we've all done it. I mean, I feel like putting everyone, we've even stacked people on top of each other. Two of my buddies in the corner. One time, me and my buddy in the corner stacked up trying to get this curl for his little brother. Super, super good rider. I mean, 360s, just crazy rider. His name's Bronx. He's really, really, really good. I mean, I think you've seen some of his clips on my Instagram.
I think now that you mentioned that, I think I know who you're talking about. And it makes me, you talk about 360s and stuff. Last weekend
Mhm.
we had this girl, that lady that has the RI. She was on there and she was doing 360s, she was doing shoves. I'm like, well, it's
Yeah.
possible on my boat. I'm just not that good yet. So made me feel bad that I'm like, oh great, I can't even land a 360 behind my own boat. But
Hey, at least somebody did it. That's the goal. I mean, just
right.
to have fun. And I mean, we really had to do some really big modifications to even get that wave to on the Supreme to, be able to, do 360s and, big shoves, big airs. There's this one clip he probably got 10 inches, maybe even a foot off the wave, just
Aired out.
tearing it up. And I mean,
Nice.
that was right before I was telling you how the water got super shallow and the wave
Mm-hmm.
disappeared. That
Mm-hmm.
was right then and there, right by Lighthouse, this place in Discovery Bay, where, pretty open channel, kind of going towards Ski Beach a little bit, where, our big hangout area and, kind of where everybody just parties and has fun. So, but I mean, yeah, the wave, it's there, but you really got to throw some people in the corner.
I guess yeah. Let's talk about. We talked about on the last episode my setup.
Mhm.
What was your setup on the Supreme for the Zeus? Because you had the 25-foot Zeus. So
Yeah. So for Goofy, Bronx is Goofy. We have 100 on the surf side, 60, and there's this tank. It's right under the ice chest next to the driver's seat. There's a kind of like it's almost like a belly tank, but it's not up in the front. We had
mm,
that tank at 60, the bow 25, the non-surf side at 70, and the two back bags at 100. We also had, I believe, 300 pounds of lead. Usually, sometimes we throw a little bit more in it just to, really get that size and power. And then usually we have 6 to 10 people with us, all that weight, and then, all the gas and gear and all that ice chest really gave that boat, like, hey, I can do this too, just like how the other big name boats can for
right, right.
a lot cheaper price than, 300 grand. I mean, it got the job and I miss it. I want another one, but I need more tech. I need a bigger wave. I need just a little bit more.
I mean, that's the ongoing thing. Is you wonder, you say the bigger wave. It's like, are you
Mhm.
gonna be? What are we gonna be surfing? 3, 4 footers here behind
Yeah.
boats soon. And the one wave I feel like is rad is that kid out of Utah. Is it Tyler? Shoot, I should have looked up his name. He rides for Mono surfboards and he does a bunch of stuff and he shreds. And they do a lot of longboard riding too, which is super
Mhm.
sick. They make longboard riding look fun. And so like I would never like want to ride a longboard, but they're like doing a bunch of crazy stuff on that. And that kid shreds and he's well, maybe it's Tanner something. I want to say it's
Mhm.
Tanner. Could be wrong. I'm drawing a blank on his name, but yeah, they shred behind that way, and their wave is consistently like super long,
Mhm.
curling. And I know they ride a lot of MBs out there. So um yeah, I mean, the problem with I guess my concern with the tech side of things is more tech you throw in there, the easier, or it's harder
Yeah.
to track down the problem, right? Whether it's the screens, something in a wire, you have a pinched connection or whatever.
Mhm.
That's my only concern when it comes to all this tech. And like we talked about on the Supra Bimini,
Yeah.
like, yeah, it's sick, but then when that thing takes a shit, like, are you going to be able to like unfold it manually or are you
Mhm.
kind of just SOL no shade? So,
Yeah, no, I mean, with the tech, I know a feature that I really liked with the Supreme is I know, a lot of different boat companies do this, but it's just like a car. When something
mm,
went wrong, it would flash check engine light and I could click on it, read me the code. I could clear the code. It would tell me what was wrong, what the code was, which I really, really like. I mean, I feel like the technology it has advantages and it has disadvantages because I mean it's great if your boat can tell you what's broken. I
right.
think we had not enough octane level. I thought, oh yeah, I can put 89 in it. Apparently not. I mean, but that's
So yeah, so you have to run 91 in yours.
yeah, I had to run 91. Even my dealer I talked to at California Boat Co., he was like, yeah, I put 89 in all the boats. He's like, it should be the same. So put 89 in it and full tank of 89, check engine light, check engine light. It said some sensor. I think it said
Mhm.
like octane level too low, replace sensor. And I'm like, this is a brand new boat, replace sensor. So we went back to the dock, put a little bit of 91 in it and some octane booster just because we had a full tank of gas. It's not like we
Right,
could
right.
drain it. So threw some octane booster in it and it ran like a champ. No check engine lights, nothing. Boat was great all day. There was one time the boat got really, really hot. It was probably 107 degrees. Boat's running all day, full of ballast. It did, I wouldn't say overheat, but it was probably 100 and probably 205 degrees, the boat.
That's what your
Uh,
sensor was reading.
yeah,
I was,
205, 210, which is it's not killing it, but it's hot. You can really hear the motor starting to struggle for sure.
what does your boat normally run at, like temperature wise, like when it's happy, normal day?
On a nice calm day, 180.
Okay.
Maybe a little bit, give or take, probably a little bit lower, 170 maybe.
That okay. I was curious too because I'm curious what other boats run compared to mine. Like I know what mine is, and like a summer ago, yeah, it was last summer, not this year, but the previous year, we had
Mhm.
a overheating issue, and my boat didn't come with a sea strainer, so just to
Oh,
catch all that debris and stuff like that. So
mhm,
last summer we had a lot of runoff from like the winter and the storms and all that. So we had a lot
mhm,
of like sticks and other just crap in the water. And so we went out a couple trips, no big deal. And we were on our way to the cove like on a holiday weekend, and the boat went into like it didn't go yeah, it kind of went into limp mode. So under idle it was totally fine, ran normal temperature, it runs between 150 and 160. And then we get out on the wake zone and I go to get on the gas and it like falls on its face, and I watch the temp spike, like it just starts going up. It's like 170,
mhm,
180, 190. I'm like, what the hell? So we like limp it through the weekend, and then it spent like 4 days at the lake trying to figure out what this problem was, because I thought it was a thermostat. Pulled the thermostat off, put a new thermostat in it. Wasn't that. Then somebody's like, "Oh, do you have a sea strainer?" I was like, "No, what the heck is that?" And he goes, "Oh yeah, that should be this hose or where your inlet's at." Well, in my inlet, I looked underneath the boat and there's like a bunch of sticks in like the inlet pickup. I was like, "Oh, okay." Well, then it goes straight into like the trans cooler.
mhm.
And so if you undo that hose, there's a like a screen in the trans cooler to keep
Yep.
shit from going up there. Well,
Mhm,
I put a screwdriver in there and just like moved it around, and you watched all this shit fall out of it. So it was like packed up in there. But it took me like 3 to 4 days. I literally went to the boat lake every day after work at like 4 or 5 o'clock, dropped it in the water, tried to figure it out. That didn't work. This didn't work. Like tried the thermostat. That didn't work. Then I tried something else, and then I finally got on the phone with somebody who's like, "Oh, try this." And so eventually got that figured out. But it was like a nightmare trying to figure it out. Once I put the sea strainer in there, it's gravy, no issues.
mhm,
But yeah, it's like crazy, like some that little thing, and it even is done in another time. There wasn't that much stuff in there, but it was just enough to like block it. So it's like under idle, just floating. It's totally fine because I ran it on the hose. Also, when I first like figured it out, I ran it on the hose.
mhm,
It runs fine on the hose. As soon as there gets like the smallest little buildup in there, it's
mhm.
terrible. So, and I've been doing that. Limped it. Have a boat. Have 8, 10 people on the boat. Limp it to Party Cove. I was like, whatever. We're halfway there. I'll limp it there. We'll tie up, and then I'll start tearing it apart so that I can and let it cool down a little bit. So I'm laying underneath, and it still doesn't. The heat doesn't escape, right? So you're like burning your
Mhm.
arms because you're trying to reach down this thing. I'm like laying down the side of the ballast bag, trying to pull this hose off next to the motor. It's not fun to do, but you can do it on the lake too. So
So with the Delta is a very, I don't want to say dirty, but it's brackish water. So it's
let's
not the
call it what it is.
cleanest.
We know what the
Yeah.
nickname for the Delta is.
Yeah,
The
it's
Dirty D.
the dirty D. So, all those underwater weeds and little
Mhm.
sticks and stuff. My sea strainer has been clear that whole time I've had that boat. Never had
Really?
a weed problem. I mean, I've gotten, weeds in my prop, throw it in reverse, boom, it's fine. But my sea strainer didn't pick anything up. And I'm really, really, really glad that, nothing went wrong with that whole thing. Because when motors overheat, that's a whole nother big problem and money, 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 money.
Yeah, no, that same thing though happened to that other kid that bought the 17 axis. Same exact thing
Mhm.
happened. I was dropping my boat in the water. He's like, "Hey," he's like, "Dude, my boat just like died." I'm like, "Where are you?" I'm like, he's like, "Oh, I'm right in this cove over here." I'm like, "Just start driving to Party Cove. I have a toolbox with me. I'll meet you there." And sure as shit, that's like the same. His was laid out a little differently, but I'm like, it was the same exact problem. He got picked up a bunch of shit, didn't have a sea strainer, and his boat was like overheating, doing the same deal. So you live in, you just figured out, like nobody tells you like, oh hey, because in California I didn't get like a lot of runoff or a lot of dirty water, so like, it was never an issue. And so that was the first time I had to deal with it.
Knock on wood, boats that I'm on or riding behind or just on in general don't usually have too many problems, which I'm grateful for. Knock on wood. I think so. One time I had a belt come off on the
Oh well,
Supreme, which was super easy fix. We just went back there, stretched it out a little bit, pulled on some things, a couple screws, put it right back on. No big deal. Another time we were with another family and we were at New Maloney's and there was an underground rock shelf, but it
uh,
wasn't marked and just right over it. And you heard it, which I mean, we made it back, obviously hit the rock shelf, made it back, and I mean, it was hurt. You could water leaking in, nothing too
oh,
crazy. Um, Still made it back on plane, kinda. Prop wasn't too banged up, which I was really surprised because usually when you're hitting these, obviously these big rocks, your stuff underneath is going to get absolutely demolished.
was that there's a guy in our surf group chat that he came back late one night and the water was like lower than normal,
Mhm,
and he was like at the launch ramp and there's a rock that he didn't see before, put a
mhm.
huge hole in the bottom of his MB. It was one of those MBs that I rode behind, and they were all paranoid that it wasn't going to make it, and they were able to fix it. But I was like, that sucks. Like that's like a nightmare of mine because you obviously go to PAL, you see that the stories at PAL, like those
Yeah.
hidden shelves that we talked about as well as those hidden spots, or you see the videos. There's a boat parked up on there, and you're
Mhm.
like, and those lakes are so big, they obviously can't catch them all, right? But
Yeah, yeah.
um, my buddy that has the one MB that I would love surfing behind, he has there's like a GPS that he has on his iPad,
Mhm.
and I forgot the program. I'll get it from him, but it's like Aquatics or something like that. I don't know what it is, but it basically lays out all the lakes you go to, and it'll tell you
Mhm.
like depth, like as like from the edges at least, and it'll tell you like different spots. So I was like, oh, that's sick to like the technology to
Yeah,
have
yeah.
that.
I think probably one of my biggest fears is, me going out my boat and hitting something and it taking on water.
Hmm.
I've had it happen to me before. In my Sanger, I didn't have bilge pumps. Older boat. I mean, they come with bilge pumps, but I think the thing with that boat is the owner they were probably old and he just took them out and didn't end up replacing them, is what I'm guessing. So
They go
we
out all the time though too.
yeah, yeah. So the prop got all tore up. I think the shaft broke a seal or it wasn't packed right, and I left the boat at the dock for probably 3 hours. And I come back in and my floor is wet, and I'm trying to figure out why my floor is wet. So I go to start the boat. I go to open the engine compartment, and it's just flooded. I'm like, I get the boat
Uh,
on. I get the trailer in the water. We go to put the boat on the trailer, and there's so much water in that boat. When the boat's like this on the trailer, the
uh,
water just started pouring out. And I mean, I'll post a video on my Instagram story, just water dumping out of that boat for probably a solid 10 minutes coming out of the drain plug hole. And I
Really
think,
full, like the full drain. It's not like
yeah,
dribbling out. It's like full
it's
water
it's
hose.
it's it's a full spout. That was probably my only really scary encounter with sinking a boat or water was that.
The guy, actually, a funny story. He told me the guy we bought the Axis from at this dealer, he would do all the demos and stuff. And he said that he's like, it'll happen to everybody once. So just warning you, it'll happen. I guess he would pulled the boat he was demoing off the trailer, and he forgot to put the plug in. And so he realized that like as he's in the water, he's like, oh shit. And so he literally just drove around wide open on plane, like hauling ass everywhere just to make sure water wasn't getting in it to
Mhm.
like basically like dummy proof it. And then he had to
Yeah.
come in. He's like came into the no wake zone hauling ass. He's like, yeah, I got no plug. Like then he was like, people were like yelling at him and shit. And he's like, no, dude, I got like no plug. I got to get it to like basically get it there. Um, that's like a paranoia of mine. I do not want to worry. Like I'm scared to death of forgetting a plug.
So with the talking about plugs, the whole plug thing, the Supreme was a little different. It was really, really, really weird, but it was kind of cool. I've never seen it on another boat before. So instead of it being like a normal, drain plug with the flip or the twist, it was this huge, probably I don't even know how big it was, but this huge bolt. Like you needed, a ratchet or something to take it off, and it's huge. I've tried to take it off. It never ever came out. It had
The one
that
that's like
one.
under the swim step.
Yeah, it's this huge bolt, and I could never get it off. And then it had a T plug. The T plug too was like super, super tight. I don't think I've ever pulled the plug out of that boat, which I mean sounds really, really bad, but I just couldn't get it out. And I mean the bilge pumps were automatic, so I wasn't too worried. With water being in there, bilge pumps worked really, really good in that boat. They've came on many, many times from just between rain. We don't leave our boats out in the rain, but it rains here and there.
Yeah, you're on a trip, like it rains,
Yeah.
or if you have it in the driveway getting ready to go for the next
Mhm.
day or overnight or whatever.
Yeah, so
Um,
rain and sometimes I notice the vents on the back for the fans and stuff when we would
mm.
slow down, the water would go in and pour in, but it got pumped right back out. So I'm not really too concerned about it. Did scare me a couple times with the bilge pump light flickering on, but it was
When it
all
comes
good.
on automatically, like it kicks on, it's like
Yeah,
just notifying
yeah,
it's on. That thing, like oh my god, like mine's been doing it more now, and I don't like it.
yeah.
But I actually use a plug because I hate because there's like the traditional square, right? The
Hmm.
brass one, and you normally have to use like a crescent wrench to pull it on
Yep.
and off. I've actually for like the last 3 years, I've used this plug called the Vault, and it's a triangle, and you can do it by hand, and it's
Hmm.
it's a plastic piece with an O-ring, and it's like a triangle, and you can do it by hand. Needs no tools. That thing has been awesome, and I have like three of them, and I think they're like the greatest thing ever, and they've always been solid to me. So that's the one thing I do love. I've had a bilge, so I had a bilge go out and it came back to life, which makes zero sense. On the Axis, they have this one in the front,
Hmm.
and it's a pain in the ass to get to. And I remember I was having maintenance done. They're like, "Hey, just FYI, you're like your bilge, like because I noticed it wasn't always flicking on or not. It sometimes it automatically kick on, and sometimes it wouldn't turn on when I hit it on the switch. They're like, "Yeah, your bilge is probably going out." Like I was like, "Cool." So I bought one just to have as a backup, and then I was going to do it at home, and then I just never did it. A, and then B, like some days it comes back to life, it kicks on by itself, but I guess this one has like an eye on it that looks like if it sees the water, it like grabs it. Or the guy from the guy that used to work for Tommy's explained it to me. It's like a trip. It's not just
Hmm.
like your traditional, just like float style bilge pump. So lately, it's been working great, but like I know they go out all the time. Like this one goes out all the time. It's the yellow color one, and a lot of people that I guess that bilge is notorious for going out.
One thing about the bilge pumps, for example, the Supreme, it was super weird. The batteries could be off, the boat could be completely out of juice. I don't know what it is, but those bilge pumps, if they detect water, they turn on.
Yeah,
Batteries off. I think they're hardwired into something. No idea how, but I remember the boat was sitting in the water and the batteries were dead, and I could still hear the bilge pumps turning on and off. And I'm like, how is this happening?
it's alive.
Yeah, I'm super, super curious. I want to figure it out. I was
I
thinking
remember
some type of hard wire or something like that.
when I first bought my boat, I didn't know it had like auto bilge on it. So I
Hmm.
remember driving down the street and it was like, I was like, what the heck was that? And I see in my mirror, like, there's shit pissing out of my boat right now. Like, I was like freaking out. And then actually, one time it bit me in the ass. I was backing up into, I thought it was already done. I drove like all the way home, whatever. I was backing up into my garage and it kicks on like as I'm backing up into my garage. And I'm like looking at this mirror. I look out this side and this one's like, I'm like, oh
Hmm.
shit, and like literally soaks the wall of my garage. It's like pissing on the side yard, and I keep backing up, and by the time I look over, I'm like already in the garage. It's hitting the whole side of the wall in the garage. great. Now I'm gonna have water damage on my house. Awesome. So that was a pretty funny story. Like, and I was just like, I was like, how did that even happen? Like, we've gone up, down, sideways, all the way
Yeah,
back
yeah.
home, and now you want to kick on? Like, how was there any more water even in there? Because I leave the plug out the whole way home. Like, what the heck?
Mm. Same
So
thing happened to me, except we were driving down the road, and I'm like, we've been driving for probably 15 minutes, nothing, boats sloshing back and forth. And keep in mind, we're in traffic. So just bilge pump shoot out, hits a car, dude's like, what the, and I'm like, there's nothing I can do. I mean, the boat has a mind of its own. Even if I turn the bilge pumps off, which I mean, they're always off. I never
right,
ever turn them
leave
on.
them
It's
on.
just
Yeah, yeah.
auto. Yeah, there's nothing I can do. It was
Soaks the side of
on,
his car.
yeah, it was on Discovery Bay Boulevard coming, and it just shot out everywhere. And I'm like, oops. And it's done it more than once. It hasn't happened one time. It's probably 4 or 5 times, coming from Shasta too. Just shot out all over the freeway. And I'm like, I mean, boat has a mind of its own. What do you want me to do?
I think it'd be hilarious to like somebody's got their window down, you just cruising by and
Yeah.
it hits on, and you're like, "Oops, my bad," because they're high up. Like especially if you're in a car, like if
Yeah.
you're in a car like a small SUV, that thing is like in line with your window.
Yeah. And I mean, the Supreme 18-inch rims, huge boat made trailer. So it's just going right on top. Um, definitely tall on the trailer. So really just
Oh
went
yeah,
everywhere.
that's what's crazy too is going from my first boat to all these new boats. They're
Oh,
so
yeah.
tall
Yeah.
on
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
trailer. Like
And
you
I,
almost need to bring a step ladder for like some of these people to get into them. They're like, "Well, how do I get in?" And sometimes I'll like put my tailgate down. I'm like, jump on the tailgate, walk in the front, like
I
just
think,
because of how tall they are.
with me, it was a little kind of my boat adventure was a little crazy. I went from this little 21-foot Sanger V210 340 Scorpion motor, super tiny boat to just this huge Supreme. There was no
In
in
between.
between. It was just there, and it was a lot to swallow. Once you get it down, everybody's gonna, have troubles in the beginning. I mean, really to
Yeah.
learn these boats, 6 months is what you need, I think. Really to learn all the
And even
features.
yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. And then even then you're still learning stuff every day, like how to do something better, how to excuse me, God, why am I so tired today? Oh no, shit. How to like come into the dock better, or it's like, oh, it's windy this way, or it's windy that way, And I
Yeah.
think a lot of times too, like if there's, it's almost easier to stay under power than it is
Mhm.
to back on and off. I don't know. And like every time
Mhm.
I tell myself to do a certain thing, and every time I just get in the zone, and every time it's a little different. So it's like, oh, I know I need to be in line with this side of the pole, but
Yeah.
so I don't drift over and stuff like that. So my biggest advice, I guess, would be to anybody in the boat industry, whether it's you're teaching your lady how to back into the ramp, or you're
Mhm.
coming into the ramp, or just doing anything, tying up. Just be patient. Like that's the
Mhm.
biggest thing. Like I know everybody's in a hurry, everybody's trying to get there. Like I'd rather do it one time than have to reset and do it again, or you know what I
Yeah.
mean. Like so like when I come into the dock to pick up somebody from the dock, I'm nosing in, I'm like creeping in there because I don't
Yeah.
want to hit the dock. I don't want to have to worry about you catching it and smashing you in between the dock. Like
Mhm.
we'll take our time. Then we'll take the extra 30 seconds to do it, and then we'll be on the lake rolling instead of me having to like slam the gas, slam the brakes, slam this, do that. Um, and whenever we go to the lake, my lady, she backs me in, and everybody's like, "Oh, you know how to back in a trailer?" And like guys are staring at her, and like we'll watch a dude crab walk all the way down, and then she'll come in, rip it one time, and then we pull out, and like we'll have like old guys like cheering her on, like, "Oh, that was sick, good job," and all the women are like, "Yeah, that was awesome, sick."
Yeah.
So
Well, I mean, yeah, it was, I think this was a good one. I think next episode we'll definitely need to talk about those crazy boat stories. Get some of
there's
those going. I mean,
there's definitely a lot of there's there's so many that like where do you start? It's like what story do you want to go? Crazy experience, crazy just party experience. Like there's obviously a whole gambit of stuff, an oh shit experience. You know what I mean? So
mhm,
um, I know you decide, or I guess if the right my question for you though is since you're looking at Supra, you're kind of
mhm.
dabbling with the Malibu. What is your heart calling, or does it just depend on the deal at the end of the day?
I think really the deal. I'm even starting to look at the Enzos. I really like those Centurion Enzos, and just maybe just buy one and trick it out and go full redo and just throw money at it, but I mean, I really, really like Supra. I'm really stuck in between the SE 550 and the Malibu M235. That's really where I'm stuck. Malibu is a little bit cheaper just because it's a little bit older,
Hmm.
but
How
I
many hours are
think
on that?
I want to say 300. So all right amount of hours, nothing too
Yeah,
crazy.
I did talk to my guy about because like the monsoon base is just a GM base motor. He's
Hmm.
like, this motor's been dropped in every boat from like the 1990s to now.
Yeah.
They just obviously keep rebranding it, right? And he's like, it's a solid motor. Do your maintenance, like you said. Like these guys have a shit ton of hours on their stuff, and I've seen Accesses with 1,500 hours, and I'm like, I'm at 330 right now, 331,
Mhm.
and um, yeah, I mean, I think that's the biggest advice I'd give to anybody. If you're like me, you're probably going to make your thing, make your boat last a little bit,
Mhm.
depending on what industry you're in and stuff like that. So like, I plan to keep my boat like very a long period of time, unless the stars align and the deal works out.
Mhm.
So your story though, of getting 2,500 hours on your boat though, gives me hope. You know, if I have to make it last.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I think the Malibu that I'm looking at is the LT4. So it's the supercharged motor,
Oh, nice.
power. But I mean, we'll just have to wait and see what comes.
I know a lot of people cry about like the smaller motors and they're like, yeah, just do it if you're building it outright. They're like, yeah, always go for the bigger motor if you can. And
Mhm.
I didn't know that when I bought my boat. I didn't know what motor difference. Like obviously
Mhm.
I know after mine they came out with the 409 and now they're on the 450. Then now I think the new boats are the LT4, the M5s. The M5 is basically the same thing. It's just rebranded
Mhm.
essentially. But I did will say I did reprop mine and that made a
Mhm.
big difference. Before I was like screaming at 4,000, 4,200 RPM when I was surfing. And I forgot what prop we switched to. I have to go look at the number on it. But now I'm like sub 4,000 when I'm surfing.
Okay.
I'm like 30, 37 probably, maybe just
Mhm.
maybe 39, depending on what side it is or if there's a current and stuff like that. Because I do notice it sometimes going one way on the lake versus going the other way. Or if like I'm going into the wind versus not into the wind, like
Mhm.
you definitely see a difference in like the RPMs. But um, I think that made a big difference. And yeah, I also didn't do like the full ballast upgrade and stuff. I don't think I necessarily need it because I know Wake Makers makes a ballast upgrade for my
Yeah, yeah.
boat. And I thought about doing it, but I'm like, I don't necessarily need it, especially if I have because I think it goes from like 650 up to like the piggybacks are like 900. So that's an extra,
Mhm.
and that's just going to make the wave taller though. That's not going to like
Yeah, not
necessarily,
gonna do
you need to
anything.
find, you need to have like a good balance, right? So as long as you have enough people on the boat, you don't necessarily need it. So maybe if I was surfing all the time by myself, and that would help. But
Yeah. Well, I think, we covered pretty much the surf topic today. And maybe next episode will be about stories and motors. Maybe propping, the right propping, and we'll figure all that out.
right on, right on. Well,
So,
definitely stoked to do it.
yeah.
Appreciate all the help and getting this rocking and rolling, and we'll just keep seeing where it goes. Definitely like, comment, subscribe, all that good jazz that all
Yep.
these people say. And let us know what you want to see.
Yep. We'll catch you guys on the next one.